I'm Coach Lee Hopkins. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I want to welcome you to the Engaged Employee Podcast. Our mission is to emphasize the relationship between the employee and the workplace with the goal of enhancing engagement levels to create a more productive and satisfying work environment. While many organizations strive to create a more engaging atmosphere, they often miss the mark by forcing connection with big team building events like axe throwing or escape rooms. Those activities only leave employees with a short-lived sense of belonging. Organizations may also try smaller and more suffocating events like happy hours or group birthday celebrations that their employees feel obligated to attend. As a social connections and business culture coach, I've found that to create a stable, engaged, and productive workforce, there needs to be a shift in focus from mandatory fun and manufactured connection towards building trust and authentic conversation. Join me and a guest as we dive into social wellness strategies for the individual employee, techniques for developing interpersonal relationships with coworkers, and even some approaches for leaders to enrich the overall organizational culture. The Engaged Employee Podcast starts now. Hello and welcome to the Engaged Employee Podcast. My guest today is Jacqueline Wales. Imagine empowering your team members to undergo lasting personal and professional transformations, enabling them to supercharge your company's growth. Well, that's exactly what Jacqueline does. Jacqueline is a TedX speaker, author, and the owner and founder of Transformational Strategies for Success. Her company distributes several online self-development programs that are focused on employee development and relationships that guarantee lasting success for individuals committed to growth. Our conversation today will be focused on interpersonal relationships between coworkers and employees. Jacqueline, welcome to the Engaged Employee Podcast.
Pleasure to be here, Lee. Thanks so much for inviting me.
I'm so glad that you're here. So let's dive right into it because I know you have a wealth of knowledge and information and experience when it comes to this particular topic of employee relationships. So I'd just be curious if you could just tell us, how did you get into this?
Well, I think the way I got into this was simply through living a very dynamic life where I had many different circumstances that were challenges and had to be overcome. And over the years, developed some great insights into human behavior and what helps all of us to not only get beyond our self-sabotaging, our limiting beliefs, and the ways in which we don't fully occupy the space that we've been given at birth, but how do we really truly rise to the full potential, not only at work, but in life in general.
I definitely hear how you had to compact that into a few sentences because that is a lifelong journey to discover the space that we've been given at birth. There's so many reasons why we wouldn't want to open up to that space. What is that space? If I would just look at it just a little bit, I would go way off onto a tangent. But we're not here for that. We're definitely here to focus on the relationship between employees and individuals within a corporation or organization. And so I'd be curious to know, since your focus is on that, so you've had a wealth of experiences, I'd be curious to know, what particularly do you do to help employees in that situation? Let's say they're not taking up the space that they could in an organization. How do you help them?
So I have several online programs that I work with my clients who are employees of companies, and they can be people who are frontline managers, people who are becoming managers, and also with senior executives. And what we're focused on most importantly is the idea of self-awareness, of raising the ability to be able to see yourself clearly and to be able to work with, the ways in which you limit yourself through your thinking, through your behavior, and through past experiences that have kind of limited how you see yourself. And my programs are all designed to take people into a deep dive of true self-reflection and the ability to clear away the cobwebs, shall we say, the behavioral pieces and the ways of thinking that have not allowed you to truly step into everything that you're capable of being and doing. And for many people who come to me, especially in the companies, they can see that their people have a lot of potential, but they're not living up to it. And it's not just about the skills and talents they need to learn in order to do their job. It's simply about, what is the internal stuff that they have going on that stops them from truly being the great performer that they're capable of being.
So I hear you say that it's not just about the skills and talents because that's what people are looking for. That's what my resume is. Essentially, it's a list of things that I have accomplished and the things that I can do. And are you telling me, because I think I heard this, you telling me that there's more to that than being successful as an employee?
100%. And it has to do with not only how you communicate with others and how you're relating to others, but it's also about how you're thinking about yourself and what you're capable of. Now, we're not just about skills and tools and talents. We're also about how do we open ourselves up to be vulnerable? How do we become more transparent in the conversations that we're having with others? How do you reveal your vulnerabilities? Because being vulnerable is one of the key strengths of a great leader, is the willingness to say, I don't know.
Now, let me stop you right there because, oh my God, no, nobody wants to be vulnerable. I'm definitely afraid of that. I don't want anyone to see. As a leader, we've been taught that we need to have the answers. We need to have the answers. And I understand that you've written a book about this and the fear factor and understanding that. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and what we could discover in that book?
So here's what I like to say. My fundamental books, you can see them on the shelf there on my left side here. The Fearless Factor and the Fearless Factor at Work are dealing with the issue of fear. Now, what is fear primarily? And I have a TED talk on it called Unleash the Power of Fear. And what we talk about with fear, at least what I talk about with fear, is that fear is the greatest driver for growth in the human experience. Now, that's something that most people don't stop to think about. But when we think about our fears, primarily it's the stories we tell ourselves. It's the ways in which we negate our thinking, the ways in which we negate our potential and the ways in which we're showing up in life. But fear primarily is an emotion, and it's driven by the thinking, and the thinking is usually on the limited side. We worry about being a failure. We worry about, we're not going to be able to get out in the world and do what we need to do. We worry about speaking up. We worry about making decisions. We're constantly in self-doubt because the bottom line is, for fear, it's about I'm not good enough. When you have people who are absolutely driven by approval, I need your validation. So you're constantly going above and beyond in trying to help other people in the hopes that they'll turn around and say, we really like you and we really like what you're doing. That in itself is a fear-driven behavior right there. So fear is a critical issue. And what's the other side of fear? Courage. The courage to take the next step, the courage to speak up, the courage to make a decision that might not be the right one, the courage to fail, which is another big piece of the fear of failure. And I hear that over and over again from high achievers. I'm afraid of failure. So what is failure but a choice and expectation or a decision that did not go the way that you had planned? Period. There is nothing more to be said about it. And it's not a marker for who you are as an individual. But the thing is, if we're not willing to be vulnerable and look at our stuff and be willing to share that with others, then of course everybody goes around going, I'm perfect. There's nothing wrong with me, which is not actually what's happening on the inside. And I think when we're willing to say, I don't know, or I'm feeling that I'm not capable, or I'm feeling like somehow, I'm just not going to rise to the occasion for whatever the reasons might be. There's an awful lot that's buried deep below the surface. And that's what Transformational Strategies is all about, is to help people reveal to themselves exactly where they stand in their own way, because we can all be our own worst enemy. And I like to say, I teach you how to be your own best friend, because you're willing to give yourself some self-compassion and you're willing to look at the ways in which as all of us are flawed human beings, how we can strengthen our sense of self and how we can go on to do even more and better than what we might be currently doing. And that's a big piece of it.
Wow. I know. Take a breath, everybody. Take a breath. Jacqueline just gave you permission to try something new, to face your fears, to even do that F word, which is fail. Are you still scared? I am. I'm scared. What do you mean? Permission to fail. Now, I understand that it is really important to be able to try to do new things. This is where innovation comes in. We try a million times. You've heard this, the light bulb, how many times it take to fail to actually create the success that we're looking for, but that's absolutely terrifying. And I know that you've worked with people who are in that position, who want to take a step, who are just feel like they're definitely terrified to fail, as you mentioned. What is one thing that you'd recommend to my audience, to somebody out there who is feeling like that? Like, I hear you saying it, Jacqueline, but I don't know if I can. I don't know. What would you recommend to them?
So here's what happens when I can admit that I don't know, when I can admit that I am not feeling that I'm capable. Now, let's say you're talking to your manager. Now, again, we're talking about interpersonal communication. Let's say you're talking to your manager and you're able to say to them, you have to help me understand. I'm not really getting what it is that I need to do, or I'm afraid of failing. And they need to be able to give you permission because it's a two-way street that says, you know what, we all fail because failing is part of our success. So if you're not doing what you think you want to be doing, or you're not capable of doing what you think you can be doing, let's talk about it. Let's figure out how I can help you to do what you need to do and feel better about what you are all about. And that, again, it's a two-way street here. Nobody is the perfect example of I've got it all together. And if you think you have, let me tell you, you don't. So being honest about that is like, yeah, I don't know. I really, I'm learning. I'm open to learning. I'm curious. And that's another big piece of it. Stay open, stay curious to tell me a little bit more. Help me understand. Let's figure out what strategies would work for you. There's all kinds of ways in which we can have this conversation, and in the short time we have together, I'm just scratching the surface of it.
I know you are, and I'm so grateful for it. There were so many ways that we could have dove in a little deeper to this conversation. But listen, everybody who's listening, if you want to learn more about what Jacqueline does, you need to go listen to the podcast, or you need to go listen to her TED Talk, not her podcast, but her TED Talk, to learn more about this, and check out her books about her experiences to help you understand more about how fear is stopping you from creating those kind of relationships that you need to get the impact that you want in your life, in your social life, in your work life, the results that you want to achieve. If you're a high performer and you're afraid, then you need to connect with Jacqueline to understand what is keeping you there. And even if you don't know that you're afraid, Jacqueline's going to help you uncover what that little thing is so that you can move forward. So, Jacqueline, it was a pleasure to hear about this, and I definitely would love to have a more of a pointed conversation with you, because you have so much life experience and so much experience in the workplace helping people overcome that. Can you tell us a little more about what your company does and where we can find you, where my listeners can find you?
So I work with organizations who are committed and dedicated to helping their employees bring out the best in themselves. I have three programs currently online. One is called the Chaos to Clarity program, which is all about how do you handle stress and anxiety and fears. Then we have Transformational Strategies for Success. It's a 6-month program that really is designed to help you develop your self-awareness, your emotional intelligence, and your ability to make better decisions. And then we have another program called Leading with Trust, which is really all about how do we build trust within an organization. So all three of those programs are online programs supported by me. me personally doing the one-on-one work with these individuals to help them truly accelerate and elevate their potential within not just the workplace, but in life. And all of my programs are designed to be life-changing.
That's absolutely right. Because how you do one thing is how you do anything. So
That's right.
it's going to be a complete overhaul in your life changing. So make sure to check out the show notes. I'm going to have all that information for you in there so that you can get exactly what it is that you need. You can connect with Jacqueline. You can find her on LinkedIn, and her website there. Her website is jacquelinewales.com. Very simple. Go ahead and check her out. And she's on LinkedIn too. You can find her at Jacqueline Wales. Just search for her and you'll be able to find her. So thank you so much, Jacqueline. I'm so glad to have just gotten a little bit of what it is to make this transformation and face that fear. We'll make sure to reach out to you again next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lee. Pleasure to be here.
You have it. Another insightful episode of the Engaged Employee Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the deep dive into the world of employee engagement, leadership, and workplace dynamics. The Engaged Employee Podcast is brought to you by the Patterns of Possibility, where we help people make more meaningful relationships in both their personal and professional life. Before we wrap up, we want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to our incredible guests and, of course, our loyal listeners. Your support keeps us motivated to bring you valuable content each week. If you found today's discussion thought-provoking and want to learn more about how we can help you or your organization make more meaningful relationships, go to patternsofpossibility.com and book a friendly conversation with me. Or you can email me your questions at patternsofpossibility@gmail.com. Stay connected with us and engage with fellow listeners by following the Patterns of Possibility on LinkedIn. You can also catch us on YouTube. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell to stay in the loop. And if you prefer the audio version, make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Your support means the world to us, and by subscribing, you'll never miss an episode. Thank you for being a part of our journey to create workplaces where passion meets productivity. Until next time, I'm Coach Lee. Stay engaged, stay inspired.